And whether they live in my district or not, I try to be to help them as best as I can. I cannot promise, and Sarah Stevens and Phil Berger and Deanna Ballard, they can't promise that they'll receive unemployment, but we'll try to get them an answer, because I know that that's a big concern, is that the Division of Employment Security is not even returning phone calls or returning emails. And so they'll more likely listen to the legislature, and we've gotten a good track record of getting an answer back. So if you do have any friends or family or former employers or whatever it may be that are having issues, please just don't hesitate to tell them to reach out to our office. This week, I filed a bill dealing with the restaurant and lodging industry. This is a bipartisan bill. I filed it with Brendan Jones out of Columbus County. He's a Republican. Steve Ross out of Alamance County, who's a Republican, and Brian Turner out of Buncombe County, who's a Democrat. This bill would use, because we do have some leftover CARES Act money that we are waiting for more flexibility from the feds, so that we can use that to help cure our budget issue that we're going to have. But this money would provide, on top of the Golden Leaf, all businesses can apply through the Golden Leaf for those small business loans. But restaurants and lodging, I think, are especially hurting because they had to be almost completely shut down. And so this would provide some loans for our restaurants and lodging as well. And it would provide them an opportunity to have those loans forgiven if they use those funds for North Carolina grown products. And so if, let's say, the Loaded Goat or Old North State were to use some of that to purchase some grapes or whatever it may be, or dairy from a North Carolina farm, then they can have part of that loan forgiven. So helping the farmer in this as well. The budget. So this week we had a appropriations meeting on Tuesday evening where we heard from our fiscal research division here at the General Assembly, our economists here. We have a $24 billion budget every year. Funds everything. 60% of our budget goes to education. A big chunk of that goes to our K-12 system. So 60% altogether goes to education, whether K-12, community college, or universities. 20% of our budget goes to Medicaid. So you're looking at 80% is already obligated in a $24 billion budget. 20% is left to spend on roads, on the highway patrol, on our prison system, on tourism, on commerce, name it, the Environment Protection Agency here, the DEQ, that 20% is spent on them. We're going to take a big hit, obviously, and I know local governments have as well. But at the state level, our chief economist here predicts that we'll be between $4 billion to $5 billion under collections. And obviously, we won't know that final number until closer to August or September, when they moved the tax deadline, which was a good thing. They moved the tax deadline to July 15th. And so usually we know our revenue numbers by this point, which is why we typically start a short session in April so that we can deal with the budget. But since the tax deadline was moved to July, we're not quite able to start working on the budget. But we do know that we'll be somewhere between $4 to $5 billion under collections. That's a huge hit. The good thing is that we have been using our money wisely since I've been in the legislature. We have invested into our state's rainy day fund to prepare for certain things like this, so we didn't have to deal with a circumstance like 2008 again. And so in our rainy day fund, we've got about $1.3 billion sitting in that rainy day fund. Last year, and as many of you who follow the news, we didn't have a budget last year, which didn't mean that the state shut down. A couple years ago, we passed a bill and the governor signed it that recurring appropriations would always, regardless of the budget, would still be funded. So that meant that teachers were still getting paid and highway patrolmen were still getting paid. It was just the non-recurring expenses that weren't in there. So maybe like grants to municipalities or funding to our state parks, that might have been affected. So we did not have a budget last year because the governor vetoed the budget that the General Assembly sent him. The House was able to override his veto, but the Senate was not able to override his veto. And so we did not have a budget last year. And because of that, there was about $300 million left at the end of the table, not spent. So that's about $1.5 billion right there between that and the rainy day fund. And like I said, we're still waiting for more flexibility from the CARES Act, from our federal elected officials. And so I encourage you to reach out to Virginia Fox's office, because we are going to be in a situation where we could use that money to fill in that hole, that $4 to $5 billion hole at the state level, so that you won't have to see major cuts to state services this year. But right now we're preparing to make some very difficult decisions when it comes to our state budget, just because we have such a huge hole to fill because of COVID-19. Some of the other things that I've been working on in this session, the big one was a bill that I passed last year that directly impacted, I think, small businesses all throughout my district, throughout the 91st district, Stokes, Surrey, and Rockingham counties, which was the Association Health Plan bill. And I think this is big for chambers of commerce. It's big for small businesses all across the district and across the state. It allows, obviously, going out on your own to purchase health insurance can be very expensive because of the Affordable Care Act regulations. So what the Association Health Plan bill does is it allows for the Chamber of Commerce, the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce, to offer its members health insurance, so that you're pooling together with other small businesses, therefore making the pool larger and bringing the costs down. It allows for, realtors, the North Carolina Realtors Association, to offer it to their members, their realtor members. It helps every small business, whether it be a realtor, an electrician, a plumber, you name it. I think it would help each person. That bill has passed. That passed last year. I think it was back in September. The governor did not sign it, and the governor did not veto it. So that meant that the bill became law, notwithstanding any objections of the governor or any action of the governor. And so it became law. The concept of association health plans, though, I will say, is part of a federal litigation case. This all started, a lot of states are going down this direction, but it all started when President Trump signed an executive order allowing for association health plans that was immediately taken into federal litigation. But like I said, a lot of states, including North Carolina, has taken action to go ahead and have it in our books for when the courts decide. I, for one, I'm obviously not a lawyer, thank God, and not a legal expert, but can't see how being able to pull together with other people would be considered unconstitutional. So anyway, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that y'all have. And like I said, it's truly an honor to serve you, and if there's anything our office can do, we're just a phone call or an email away. You can call us at 919-733-5609, or you can email me at kyle.hall@ncleg.net.
John Tarn asked Kyle, what is the criteria for an essential business that grocery stores have been able to serve our community safely? Is this a model that can be used to open more businesses? Question about essential businesses. I don't know whether you take that one or not.
Well, first, I'll say I consider every business to be essential, and every worker to be essential. But I honestly don't know how to answer that question, and I'm not trying to be partisan or anything like that, but that's something that we've been grilling the governor on and the Department of Health and Human Services, because it's not really clear where how they're deciding what is considered an essential business and what's not. It's just, I'll give you an example. This past week, when he opened up the state to phase 2, the executive order said that bars would continue to stay closed. We've got a lot of wineries in Surrey County and in Yadkin County and in Stokes County, and there was some confusion as to whether or not they were now considered essential or not, and whether or not they could open up. The lawyers here at the General Assembly, they said that wineries produce a certain product, and they're not necessarily bars, and bars in North Carolina are really more private clubs. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but
Right.
that is what they were coming from. And then the governor's office stepped in and said, no, hold on, wineries would still be closed. And so, the governor he waited and waited and waited, and the wineries didn't even know until 5:30 on Friday night whether or not they could open on Saturday. And obviously right now with wineries, in Surrey County especially, this is their peak time. They've already missed out on April. They can't afford to miss out on the rest of May and June. And so I'm glad that they were finally able to open. But, back to the question as a whole, I don't know how to answer that question, because I don't know what he's considering to be essential and what he's considering not to be essential. And I don't know how he's determining one way or the other.
Joe mentioned a question that, do you support a hard cap on local property tax increases? Local property tax increases.
Yeah, I'm the type of person, I would much rather decisions be made at the local level. And so I would much rather our municipalities and our counties make that decision on their own. But if things got too extreme, obviously in the future, I wouldn't be opposed to coming in from the state level and putting a cap.